As individuals continue to come on board, we'll wait and begin in about another minute of time. And we thank you for being here for a very powerful and important briefing. Erev Tov, good evening and a warm welcome. I'm Rabbi Howard Buchler of the Dixels Jewish Center, and the Dixels Jewish Center, along with MERCAZ USA, is proud and honored to be able to present this briefing, which will feature Sarrae Crane, the Executive Director of MERCAZ USA, and as our moderator, Stuart Ain, a distinguished journalist and broadcaster as well. And a few words of brief introduction. We are all deeply overwhelmed and pained and disturbed by what has happened, and that is the understatement of the millennia. 1,400 Israelis were slaughtered in the killing fields of southern Israel by Hamas, the terrorists, in their contempt for humanity. What we've also learned in the past couple of days that on the battlefield, truth has been a casualty as well. And we'll be talking about that as well and what we see in the social media. Tonight is the night to bring you up to date as Sarrae has just returned from Israel. And I briefly mentioned, and each one of us in our synagogues, in our communities, in every aspect we have, we are grateful to everyone. And at this moment, there are more than 130 screens open with lots of individuals keenly interested in the observations and the updates. We will, at this moment now, mute everyone so that we will be able to ensure that during the program, and Sarrae and Stuart, please unmute yourselves at this moment so that during the program, there will be no interruptions. For those who wish to, toward the end of the program, have questions asked, we are recommending that you please ask those questions through the chat function, and I will then be able to convey the questions toward the end of our program. We'll be here for about 45 or 50 minutes of an update. Quick reminder, advocate for Israel. We're grateful that we're all ambassadors for Israel. Yachad Ninatzeach is the new phrase in Israel. Together, we are going to bring victory to ensure that justice is served at every moment. Am Yisrael Chai, may the people of Israel and all of us, the devotees of Israel, work together to ensure that we support Israel by our advocacy, by buying blue and white, buying Israeli products, by thanking all the public figures that have spoken out on behalf of Israel, and with the moral clarity to cry the horrors that we have witnessed, and continue donating to very worthy philanthropic organizations that operate on the ground in Israel. There are many other ways to do so, but without further ado, I present Stuart Ain, and a warm welcome again to our briefing. Stuart Ain will begin the program by introducing formally Sarrae, our speaker.
Right, thank you, Rabbi. Sarrae Crane, welcome. Sarrae is the Executive Director of MERCAZ, that's the Conservative Women's Zionist organization, and she went to Israel just a few days ago as part of the Conference of Presidents of major American Jewish organizations. Basically, the conference was there to see what was going on the ground, lend support, etc. You've been to Israel, Sarrae, about, 50, 60 times. How is this trip different than all the other trips?
So this is not the first time that I've been there. I was on a summer program. I spent a year at the Hebrew University. I've been touring. Those are kind of normal trips. But I've been there at other times when it's been difficult in Israel. I was there when the first Intifada broke out. I was there during the Gulf War in '91, carrying my gas mask and ending up in shelters at times. I was there during the second Intifada. I've been there during terrorist attacks. So I've been there at times when the country's gone through difficulties. But this was different. This was really different. This was the worst attack on Jews since the Holocaust. The country is reeling. People are in absolute shock. And if you think about it, they've called up 400,000 reservists. The Israeli army usually has about 170,000 people on active duty. So there are over 500,000 people who've been called up in a country of 10 million. So the streets are empty. People are certainly not going out partying. And this is my third trip in 2023. I was there in February and I was there in April. And both of those times, it was difficult to move from one place to another because everybody was out demonstrating. Streets were blocked. There were people everywhere. This time, the streets were empty. The malls were empty. Nobody was there. There was an eerie feeling to it. It was very easy to get from one place to another because there was no traffic, but there was no one there. And, people are being very cautious as to what they're doing. When I arrived, it was hard to get flights. So we were on a variety of different flights. I ended up being on a very early flight. So when I wanted to leave the hotel, security stopped me and they said, it's fine for you to go out so long as you have the Homeland Alert app in your phone. So they helped me put it in my phone and they said, it's going to be okay. There's shelters everywhere, but you need to know that if the alert goes off, you need to get to a shelter immediately. Stop whatever you're doing and go to a shelter.
Now you're in Jerusalem.
Yes, I was in Jerusalem, and during the 4 days I was there, there were no sirens. But I was in Jerusalem, which is.
But where was everybody? All the people who demonstrated, where did they go?
Well, some of them are in the army. There are 500,000 people in the army.
What about all the others?
They're doing
about that.
Amazing volunteer work. So my college roommate lives in Israel, and she's not Haredi, but she's very religious. She was not involved in any of the demonstrations. And she said to me, the most amazing thing happened, that this country is very divided. And, she understands why it's divided. She said, but people turned on a dime. And because there have been all these demonstrations, there were WhatsApp groups and people were organized and they knew how to contact one another. And they're all out there figuring ways they can help other people. And they've got amazing things organized. That part of what we did during the 4 days we were there was to say thank you to the soldiers. How do you say thank you? There are groups in Israel that have come up with supplies that soldiers need. They're in touch with each one of the bases. They have the supplies. They don't need us to bring them from Chutz La'aretz. They've got them there, but they need to put them into bags. And then they've got drivers who are going from army base to army base. And they're basic things they need. So the question was, why doesn't the army have it? And the answer is the army does have it. But they have 400,000 people that they called up. And how do you get supplies to 400,000 people overnight when you're trying to win a war? So volunteers have stepped up and they're doing those kinds of things. They're doing amazing things. They're helping families that their school children who aren't in school. Some of the schools have resumed, but it depends upon where the school is located and what kind of facilities the school has. If it's got a great shelter and they feel comfortable taking care of the kids, school is open. If they're near an Arab village, they're not open. So you've got moms who are home with their kids, and they're being kids. They're doing what kids do. They fight, they do this, they do that. And so, those people are also out of the workforce. So they need help, and help is coming. People are doing just amazing things. It's incredible how resilient the people of Israel are and how much they care about each other and how the differences haven't gone away, but they're not front and center anymore. Because just like in your family, when you can disagree, you do that and the disagreements are real. But in a time of need, you come together. And it's very heartwarming to see that in Israel. And part of what we did was we were there to hug Israelis. We were there to give them a big hug. And that was really felt. And they made us feel very good about coming.
The rabbi mentioned that this October 7th, 140,000 Jews slaughtered. That was the worst since the Holocaust.
Or 1400.
140,
What did I say?
1400.
14.
right.
But you made a point earlier. Was this like the Holocaust?
The attack was horrific. There's no other word to describe it. It was horrible that when you listen to people talk about it, you can't help but cry. But the difference between this and the Holocaust is the response. We're in our country. We're in Israel. We have an army and we have world support. When we went to see the prime minister, who did give us 5 minutes, but he left a meeting with the prime minister of the UK to come to talk to us, which was very nice of him. But the prime minister of the UK was there. The premier of Italy was there. The president of France was there. They're getting incredible support from the EU. And President Biden arrived just a couple hours after I did. And I have to tell you, when I saw on television, Air Force One landing at Ben Gurion and the president of the United States getting off the plane in the middle of the war, I cried. And it's hard to make me cry. I cried and I watched that. And when I listened to people, and we met with families of hostages, and they said Biden found time to meet with them while he was there, that it was unbelievable. And the US has ships in the Mediterranean off the coast of Israel, and the UK is sending ships, and we've got friends in the Arab world. And the word is that behind the scenes, they're doing lots of things. So this is not the Holocaust. During the Holocaust, nobody defended the Jews. And at this point, we do have friends. Israel has friends. And let's remember, there was a whole thing, a month ago, people were screaming about Biden not inviting Netanyahu to the White House. Well, he didn't invite him to the White House, but he came to Israel during a war and he met with him. So that speaks volumes. And the Israelis now all love President Biden. It's most unfortunate for him that they're not all voting, but they love him. And,
Right.
and they were really touched. And, so I think that's a big difference between now and 75 years ago.
I know you had just a brief few minutes with him. What did he say? Other than thanks for coming.
Well, he said
Biden
thanks
said-
for coming.
And
And he
not-
said this is going to be a long war.
BB.
Yeah, he said it's going to be a long war. So the question is, what does a long war mean? It's already 3 times as long as the 6-day war. It's already almost as long as the Yom Kippur War. There's a lot of we don't knows. Not only how long will the war be, will the Northern Front really open up? What's really going to happen? When will they go into Gaza? They clearly have to go into Gaza at some point. It seems that Biden made his point in saying to Israel, don't make the same mistake that the US made after 9/11 in rushing into Afghanistan and Iraq, that you've got to go in and be strategic. You need to accomplish the goal with as few casualties as possible. It's also way more complicated because of the hostages. Where are the hostages? Are they being used as human shields? And there are an awful lot of innocent people in Gaza. So, and what about getting humanitarian aid in? I mean, Israel's clearly not turning on the electricity and not providing water or anything else at this time. But Israel's not stopping anyone else from doing it. And there was great hope that Egypt would do it. They've done some, not as much as people had hoped. We heard government officials who were hoping that Egypt would open the border and let the people from Gaza set up camp in the Sinai at this point. That did not happen. So, they're trying to be cautious.
You met with different groups. You met with families of people who were killed in the South. Can you talk about that?
We did, and it was just amazing to hear people talk and their strength and their commitment to Israel and their determination to go back, that these people should not have died in vain, that this is still our country and this is still our home and we want to go back. We also met with families of the hostages. We met with Hirsch Goldberg Poland's family. We met with one person. This was actually interesting. There was a person who spoke, whose name is Udi Marios. Rabbi Buchler, you may know who Udi Marios is. He owns the Blue and White Gallery in the Cardo. And it's a place.
Stuart and I have both bought from him.
Right, and I have bought
We
from
get
him.
Rosh Hashanah cards from him as well, Udi.
Right. So I have worked with him over many years. And in fact, we have one of his paintings hanging in our living room. So afterwards, I went up to him and I reintroduced myself. I said, okay, so I'm out of context, but this is who I am. And, and I got one of your paintings in my living room. And he looked and I said, and yeah, so you realize that we know these people. It's not just Americans we know, but it's really touched people all over the country. On Friday morning after the mission had ended, we met with a couple who lives in Kibbutz Gezer. And we all know people who are founders of Kibbutz Gezer, and their daughter and son-in-law are hostages. But the strength that these people have is incredible. But there's also a lot of anger that the Israeli army has not met with them. They haven't heard from the prime minister, but they did hear from President Biden, who made it a point of being there. And they felt good about that, particularly the ones who were American citizens. But they said Israel has just been overwhelmed and not seemed to have had time. They do believe that they are working behind the scenes. They have said that the Red Cross is being as helpful as it can be. And they have confidence that the hostages will be released. And we all hope and pray that that will be the case.
You said you talked to some people who said they want to go back down south. I keep hearing from people who say, no, we don't trust it anymore. It's not safe.
No. The people we met, and we met with people from Kibbutz Be'eri and from
Really?
Netivat HaSarah. And those people had actually been in Gaza. And they left Gaza when Israel left, and they reestablished the kibbutz. And they said, this is our home. The Israeli army has got to go in and clean it up, just as they promised us that they would do. And we're going back, and we want to be there. And it's amazing what's been happening in terms of evacuations, that they're getting people out of the areas that they think are most dangerous, and particularly where there may be continued fighting. And they're putting them up all over the place. We went to Kibbutz Malach Hamisha, which is on the road into Jerusalem. And we met not in the hotel. They're staying in the hotel. Yarim is a very nice hotel. We stayed there in April. But they're there. We met with them actually on the kibbutz in the Moadon. And the problem is when they left, it wasn't like they were packing for their full vacation. They had transport, but there was no room for luggage and no time to pack. So they got the people out, but they need things. The people who spoke to us all said, these aren't our clothes that we're wearing. And Israelis have donated clothing. They need toiletries, that people are making sure that they get their medications. And all of that is being taken care of. The Jewish Agency has a fund for doing this, for relocating people. The Israeli government is coming up with money for this. Hotels are opening up. It's unbelievable. The Fuchsberg Center in Jerusalem is housing 100 families at the youth hostel. So everybody is there's a call out for Israelis who own second homes. If you're not using your second home, will you put a family in? And people are really doing it. People are doing everything they can to help people.
It's really brought the country together after such division. Did anybody talk to you about what happened? I know they wanted, this is not the time, but did anybody even, quietly say to you, what happened? How could this have happened?
Nobody wants, okay, so everyone except the prime minister has taken responsibility for what has happened. They all know that something went wrong that should never have gone wrong. But at this point, they're in the middle of a war. There will clearly be a commission. There will be inquiry. We've all seen the movie Golda. At some point, there's going to be a movie on this, and we'll all know, but not now. that this is just the wrong time, that to be pointing fingers at this point makes no sense. The country's united, and what we need to do at this point is to win this war, and to find what the new normal will be. And they'll deal afterwards. I don't know anybody who thinks that Bibi will continue as prime minister after this, but pushing him out at this point does not make sense. It just doesn't make sense. So people are saying, yes, we acknowledge it. We hear what you're saying. There's merit in what you're saying, but we have to be strategic. And so everybody's united around that. And as you see that, some of the groups that had been in the opposition have joined the government, that they're working together. And that's really, it makes you feel like, of course we're going to win, because we're getting it right. They got it wrong. They clearly got it wrong. But what do you do when you get something wrong? You turn around and you have to make it right. And that's what they're doing. And we're really proud of them. And it was really good to be able to see that.
The rabbi and I were in Israel in, 1970, I don't know, during one of the intifadas. And we went into a store and you could almost buy the store for $1. I mean, nobody was shopping. There's a 75% drop in sales, 75% drop in sales. And they've had to lay off, I think, 30 to 40% of the sales staff because nobody's buying. Did you go into any stores? Did you notice that?
I went into a store that Rabbi Waxman and I always shop in, and the store was open. So of course I had to go talk to the shopkeeper. And he said to me, I'm so happy to see you. There was nobody in the store. He was filling orders from America, so he was making some sales. And he said to me, no, you don't have to buy anything. I know you'll come back. You'll come back with your husband. You'll spend money. And, it was fine. And then when I spoke to my husband afterwards, he said to me, what do you mean you didn't buy anything? You need to go back. How can you be there during the war and not buy something? I said, but I don't need anything. He said, you may not need anything, but Israel needs you to buy something. So I went back and actually I bought the necklace I'm wearing. Which I actually like a lot. I didn't need it, but I like it. So yeah, the stores, some stores were open. There were a lot of stores that were closed. But a lot of those people are holed up.
Many high-tech places people are working remotely, but the Israel economy is taking a huge hit. Lots of people who normally would be at work are filling in local police departments, local fire departments. And one of the things we're telling everyone to do is buy blue and white. Go into a supermarket. There are always Israeli cookies. Buy 24 packages, give them to your neighbor. Go into a wine store, buy a case of Israeli wine, give them to your neighbor. Go online and buy, because the Israeli economy in the midst of all of this is taking a huge hit at every level because people are not at work. My brother's the CFO of a corporation. He hasn't been to work in 12 days, 14 days. He is helping as an auxiliary policeman. He and his wife and their family and the community of Beit Shemesh are on all these runs to all these army bases, north and south. So we need to do as much as we can do. Call your Israeli family. And Sarrae, one of the quick questions that came in is, what's the pulse with the Arab citizens of Israel?
So I spent Shabbos with a friend of mine who happens to be a retired conservative rabbi. And so I took a taxi there, and he said to me, are you okay taking a taxi driven by an Arab? And I said, why not? He said, okay, it's safe, but some people are uncomfortable. So the question is, which Arabs? That there were Arab paramedics who were killed in the attack. There have been Bedouin who have been really working with Israel. There are Arab doctors in the hospital. We went to Hadassah. So the question is, which Arabs? And it's also important to remember that not everybody in Gaza is a fan of Hamas. What is true is that they needed elections in Gaza, and they needed to have kicked out Hamas, and they didn't. But it's very hard to figure this out. And, people are uncomfortable. As I said, my friend told me that her children aren't in school because it's near an Arab village. Normally, that's fine. And now, is that Arab village okay? Isn't it okay? Are they being super cautious? How do you deal with that? And it may be fine, but in times of war, people get uncomfortable. And who are these people? So it's complicated.
You raised a good question about the kids. Talk about the kids, the impact of the children on the children of what's happened.
So my friend that I spent Shabbat with is blessed. He made Aliyah. His daughter made Aliyah before he did, and he managed to get an apartment across the street from her. So her husband is in Miluim, and she has 3 daughters. They are 3, 7, and 10. The girls are sleeping in her bed every night. The 7-year-old, came to her grandparents. They came for Shabbat dinner. She walks around the apartment, closing every window and closing the shutters because she's afraid. That she knows. She's heard that things aren't good. She's heard about attacks. The kids are stressed. And, for these little kids, this is really the first time that they've had that kind of experience. This is their home. And it's very hard on them. And their routine is a mess. And their father's away. And while they can talk to him on the phone, they don't know when he's coming home. So, this is really tough.
A number of schools didn't open. A number did, many did, but a number of schools didn't open.
No, they're trying to open, and some of it is going back to pandemic on Zoom.
Nice.
Any parent who's tried that can tell you was a challenge. They're trying to at least get the little kids in Gan back into class. And they're moving some of them. And the question is, can they move from one location to another location that they think is more secure? And then the question is, how do the kids get there? What's going on? Jerusalem does tend to be safer, but nobody's going to go to the bank with that. Nobody's going to say that we'll never get hit. So my college roommate, again, one of her daughters lives in Sfat, and she's a single mom. She got her to come to Jerusalem with her daughter to stay with them. She said, why should you be alone? And Sfat's in the north. Right now it's okay. Will it stay okay? Nobody knows. I have another friend who lives in Meitar, which is next to Omer, which is near Beersheba. And she has a son who's married who lives just north of Tel Aviv. Well, they're on a walk-up, on a 5th floor walk-up, and the shelter's in the basement. The sirens keep going off. They said, we can't keep doing this. And they packed up and went to his parents. That people are trying to be together to do what they can do. It's war. And it's war that's very close to home. It's not far away. It's not like it's in Iraq or Afghanistan or Vietnam. The war's at home. And they keep finding terrorists.
Yes.
They're not all out of the country.
That's right. That's right. Is there anybody providing guidance to parents on how to work with the children who are been traumatized by this? What's happening?
Yes. And they're really coming through on that. There's psychologists available. There are programs. There are people to talk to. They are really doing the best they can. And there are groups that are set up. They really are. They're
Are
trying
schools? What about the schools? Are the schools working with the kids?
Doing that? Yeah. There's great sensitivity. There really is. And, unfortunately, Israel has a lot of experience with trauma. So they know how to do this. Is it perfect? Perfect doesn't exist. Are they making an effort? Absolutely. Yeah, they really are.
You went to Hadassah Hospital and saw some of the wounded. Talk about that.
Okay, so first of all, we went to Hadassah, I work for MERCAZ, but I come from a long line of Hadassah women. So there was great pride in going there. Hadassah, in its new building that opened in 2012, has operating rooms that are 4 floors below ground. So it's an amazing thing. And they can they can simply switch the pre-op unit to become intensive care. And then on the floor above, and the third floor, which is normally offices, -3, they've turned that into hospital rooms. So no matter what happens, Hadassah is up and functioning. It's a major trauma center. Some of the worst cases from other hospitals have been brought to Hadassah. So American Jewish community should take great pride in what we've done there. But yes. So, but we did meet with wounded. We met with a wounded soldier, and they're, and when you listen to these people and you listen to, they were wounded, they were this, they're proud of what they did. They're okay. They're telling you, I'm going to be okay. And it's amazing the amount of inner strength and the work that's been done with people. Now, of course, those are the ones who spoke to us, but they're working hard. And some of these people are going to be in hospitals or rehab for a long time, but they're determined they're going to be there. Yeah.
This is a picture 4 stories below Hadassah Medical Center, one of the operating theaters.
Right.
And they've just opened up the Magen David, the blood center, which is also several stories below to protect the blood supply.
Right.
Did you see people lining up for the blood lines to donate blood?
Some of the people in my group gave blood. Now, they're also very fussy that they test you and they're not just taking blood from anybody. So, it's tough to give blood on a very short trip if you're getting on a plane right afterwards, etc. But there were people who gave blood. And I understand the blood banks at this point have a pretty good supply right now.
Yeah, the lines outside of the blood banks, they're out around the block. Yeah, but everybody ran.
But see, that's part of what's happening in Israel, that people are really coming together. And remember that this has been one of the most divisive times in the history of the state of Israel. And this government was clearly one of the most controversial ever. But it didn't matter that when there was a crisis, people came together. And that was just an incredible thing to see.
Do you recall a story when you went to the hospital and met with some of the people who survived the attack? What they said, how they, what happened? Were they asleep or what?
No, we met with a soldier, and he was in a vehicle that they needed to evacuate. And the deal was you jump off and then you hide behind it. And there were 8 or 9 of them. The first few got out and they were okay. He got hit. And he got hit in the leg. And he said he sort of knew he was hit, but he wasn't paying attention to that because he had to run to hide. And then he said somebody came to help him. And the person who came to help him discovered that he had been hit in the arm. And as he raised his arm to try to help him, that he was bleeding all over the place. But they did get paramedics in, and ultimately they got him. And it's been almost 2 weeks that he's been in the hospital. And these are young people. I mean, they're soldiers.
Yeah.
20, 19, 20. And, they're horrific stories. So.
They said that this is going to be a long war. I've seen 3 months being cited in a number of instances. If it goes 3 months, what happens to this country economically?
So nobody would give us what they meant by long. The prime minister said it's going to be a long war. He didn't determine what that meant. We don't know. 3 months is going to be incredibly difficult. It's not only going to be economically difficult, it's going to be psychologically difficult. What does it mean to have 500,000 people called up for 3 months? What's that like? And what's it like to go home afterwards? And it's just there are too many we don't knows in this. We just don't know.
And also, Stuart and Sarrae, there have been up to at this point, 250,000 Israelis being evacuated from the border communities.
Yes.
As you mentioned before, the 10 cities in Eilat, the hotels.
Right.
So it's an implication of Israeli society.
Also, what struck me was the fact that Americans, even some who weren't called up, got on planes, El Al planes were rented by somebody bought the plane and said, okay, everybody get on. I remember that in some cases I read that the planes were so full, El Al allowed the reservists to sit on the floor of the plane.
We won't
during the
talk
flight.
about that because that's definitely not safe or legal, but
Oh,
they did what they needed to do.
absolutely.
And they flew on Shabbos, and they flew on Shabbos with the blessing of the Rabbanut. So, that was really good.
Also,
Yeah.
what we're hearing for the first time that I can recall, the ultra-Orthodox, the Haredim, are joining the military and you'll see people with payas in military uniforms, and a lot of them. What'd you say? 20,000?
They said there were 2,000 of them.
2,000. 2,000.
That's a lot for people who are
Yes.
working hard to get out of it. That's amazing.
Yes. I think you'll see even more as this goes on. Yeah. Somebody said that's the silver lining in this thing, how even they have realized that they've got to participate too.
But
Yes.
it goes back to the same theme of people coming together. And, we as Jews, we'd like to say that we're, Am Echad, and that we're one people. Sometimes it's really hard to understand that we're one people because we surely don't act like it. But right now we are. And that's amazing. And, there's a really good feeling in the midst of all of this, horror, that people have banded together to help each other, and that there's a sense of caring and of commitment. When I was talking about my friend and her little girls, so it's clearly tough. And somebody in the neighborhood baked cookies for all the kids for Shabbos. That it was, what can we do for you? What's going to make your children happy? What can we do? So, it's little things like that that bring a smile to somebody's face at a really tough time.
Yeah, neighbors were baking cookies for the kids of this lady's house. Yes. Yeah.
So
Everybody was
that's
pitching
amazing.
I'm wondering, with the President's Conference in the United States, are there comparable groups in Britain and France, and did they come too?
Well, Britain has the Board of Deputies. France has,
The Creef.
right. So
Did they come?
I don't know. And, there's also a question of lots of people want to come. That's what we want to do at this point. The leadership wants to come, and the leadership of every organization wants to come. The question, and this was one of my questions before I got in the plane, was, is this so smart? Does Israel really need us? That they've got enough trouble at this point. There are people who aren't working. I don't have a skill that they need at this point. Why am I going? So the question is, what does that mean, and where can you go? We arrived on Wednesday. There were people who were there one night. They went home on the 001 Thursday night, Friday morning. I did stay through Shabbat with friends. The question is this the right time to go? And what does that mean? And how long do you stay? And how safe is it? Government leaders will not meet with most groups. In the President's Conference, which has a long-standing relationship with the Prime Minister, got 10 minutes with him. And we got a couple minutes at the Foreign Ministry. The rest of the time, and Herzog, we did meet with Herzog. But that was it for government leaders. Usually the President's Conference mission is one minister after another, after another, after another. That wasn't the case this time. The question is, with whom will you meet? How many times can people tell their stories? Where's the line between coming and giving a big hug and coming and being a nuisance because now we have to worry about your safety and security? I'm not smart enough to answer that question. I only know that there are questions, and is that the best thing to do? I think there are a lot of things that we can do. I think if you have friends and family in Israel, this is the time to call them, to be in touch. Hey, we all have WhatsApp. It's a free call now. Be in touch with them, talk to them, let them know that you care, buy Israeli products, do your best to advocate for Israel, show up at the rallies. There will be many more rallies before this is over. Another thing that's really important to do is read the news and monitor it. There's a lot of disinformation. There's a lot of information that is just not accurate. And we should be very careful about not recirculating it and about calling it out. That, we need to do our best.
Are
Israel's
Israelis
not
watching?
perfect, but Israel's not the villain in this.
Yeah, are Israelis watching the TV and seeing the demonstrations worldwide, London, Times Square, with all these pro-Palestinian and
They know about every one of them. And
so what do they
want to
think?
tell you that I'm in New York City right now. And, and it's fine. I'm not afraid of anything. And if you ask me, the Jews are winning here, that our demonstrations are way bigger than any of the Palestinian demonstrations. But it doesn't look like that on television. They get a wide angle lens and it looks like there are many more Palestinians. And they say to me, how can you live in America? It's overrun by Palestinians. And I'm saying, where? Who? What? That's just not the case. But they know that we've demonstrated for them. They know it. And they appreciate it. And we need to keep doing it. And what we need to make sure is that every time there is a demonstration, that we fill the streets, that it can't be that we're not there.
A number of questions have come through the chat. Many of them Stuart has intuitively asked wonderfully beforehand. But one question that was just texted to me is about the television. We know when we turn on the news channels and networks in our area, we're seeing horrible, horrific, terror-filled scenes over and over again. How is Israeli television, to your knowledge or from what Israelis are saying, you've said they're seeing the positive and the negative of what's happening in the world, but what are they showing? How are they filtering? To my knowledge, the Israeli government hasn't even given a list of who has perished. People are putting it together by the funerals. What's happening in the social media and in the media of Israel? How are they handling the horrors, which are all personal? Everyone who has family in Israel, every family has been to funerals. They know people who were injured, people who were abducted. It's one big mishpacha. How are they dealing with that in Israel?
I think they're not dealing with it in the best possible way. The Israelis are actually pretty upset about that. I don't know what to say about that. And there is a lot of anger at the prime minister on that and at the army.
It's very emotional for all of us.
It is. Somebody in the chat asked about the streets in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. They're empty. They're absolutely empty. I took pictures. There's nobody out there.
Did you have trouble getting a cab?
No.
They're the only ones out there. Cabs.
Yeah, I mean, in Israel, here we use Uber. There they use Get, minute, 2 minutes. No, that's easy. No buses.
No buses.
No
Oh.
buses. There's some, but very irregular. A lot of bus drivers have been called up.
What did the
Well, the
cab driver tell
transport-
you? How did the cab driver? Did you talk to him much or not really?
I did. He lived
Talk
in
to him.
Wadi Joe's. He was an Arab.
Yeah, what did he say?
He's not happy. This wasn't his idea. He's not a fan of Hamas. That he had no control.
Right. And what about the West Bank? Now, we understand that there've been, I think even while you were there was a uprising and 60 people, I think, were arrested, including like more than 25 were Hamas members.
I don't know. We didn't spend a lot of time dealing with that. I was only on this mission for, it was quick. We didn't do everything.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yep. One other question that just came about in both Stuart and Sarrae, your impressions about more and more of the American media is now turning about and focusing on what's happening in Gaza. And they're reporting, and yes, we know that terrorists lie and are deceptive. We learned that Truth was the casualty after the hospital attack, which turned out to be an Islamic jihad Iran's missile, but how it was distorted. We're seeing now lots of images coming from Gaza about injured people in Gaza. And how is that impacting?
Well, it's a war. The definition of a war is people die, and innocent people die, and that's why war is horrible. They started this. Israel thought, and a couple of years ago on a president's conference mission, we went to Gaza. We didn't go into Gaza. We saw the wall, and we saw what they had done with tunnels. And it certainly looked secure. It looked like there was no way that anybody was going to get through. There was a gate. People came through who were working. And the joke of this was Israel was talking about adding more work permits for people from Gaza before
Actually,
this.
they did. 2 days before, they added more.
So,
Yes.
So they were going to let more people in. If you get attacked and you know that there are more supplies there, what do you think is going to happen? And the other thing is they're shooting from Gaza. And in the same way that they hit the hospital, and you saw the New York Times today on the editorial page where they actually acknowledged that they incorrectly reported that,
Yes.
which was amazing for the New York Times, that, they're going to be reports from Gaza, and they're going to focus on the destruction, and it's going to be accurate. And I will tell you that I saw that on Israeli television on Saturday night, that there were pictures of the destruction in Gaza. It's going to be there, and it's going to be accurate. The question is why, and the question is what caused it. They're pictures of war. The Israelis can respond by showing the pictures from October 7th. That's the problem. And the question is, when you have accurate information, what is it you want to see or take away from it? And the question is the commentary and what we're saying about it. And do people understand that Israel has gone out of its way to tell people in Gaza to leave? And they're trying to find places where they can go, that they've been working with the Egyptians, and they're trying to do the best they can under horrific circumstances. But there is no way that Israel is not going to do something in Gaza. It can't.
Last question. Right. Last question. This was in the planning stages for a year, 2 years. Hamas planned this out. Why, since they knew that Israel would respond by cutting off electricity, by stopping fuel, by not allowing food to come in, by all these things that they're in such short supply now, why didn't Hamas stock up on food, on fuel, on why didn't they prepare for this?
Stuart, I think that question, the answer to that is obvious. If you care about something, you do it. And if you don't care, you don't do it. And the other piece I would say is that the date of this clearly tells you that this was planned in advance. That when
yes.
you do it on the anniversary of the Yom Kippur War, you know that they chose that date on purpose. But, you plan for things you care about. If you don't care, you don't plan.
And as the spokesman for the IDF said, when asked about the fuel, he said, Hamas has plenty of fuel. He even gave the amount of fuel they have. He said, if they need it for the hospitals, go to Hamas. Hamas has it. And they just refuse to give it up. And there you go. That tells you everything right there. And he said, look, the problem is now the world forgot about October 7th. Nobody remembers. The only thing they remember now is all the people who are hungry and going without food and water in Gaza, southern Gaza.
Look, in Gaza, once upon a time I went to Gaza, not recently. I've not been there in a very long time. But Gaza is very beautiful. Gaza's on the coast, that if somebody had wanted to, it could have been developed and people would have gone there. It would have been a great vacation spot. They didn't do that. It was theirs to do with as they chose.
All the money that came in went for the tunnels, went for the military supplies, and to keep the population impoverished. One last question that came in, and Sarrae, When you left Israel, where were you at emotionally? What were your feelings, your impressions?
So my impressions were a great pride in the state of Israel and in the people of Israel and of their determination that under the worst possible circumstances that they were going to survive, and that this was going to be another bad story that was going to be part of our history, but it's certainly not the end, and that Israel is strong and Israel will continue to exist and Israel will learn from this, and that we will make this better, and that it'll never happen again, because there is no way in the world that this army is ever going to be as unprepared as it was. It's like somebody said to me, well, aren't you concerned because they allowed this to happen? And I said, absolutely not. It's not going to happen again. There's no way. And it wasn't going to happen now. That was just not a concern. So I just want to show you that I'm wearing a blue ribbon, which they gave us all, and that's part of this campaign. And they also have these arm bracelets that say, Ache Kulanu Khan, Kulanu Adayin Sham, that, until you're all here, we're all with you. So,
And that's the phrase being touted in Israel, Yachad Ninatzeach, together we will lead to victory. There were failures, as you so beautifully and powerfully and poignantly said. Most leadership, except for one or two people, have acknowledged the failures. And now is the time not to focus on the failure, but to focus on success, on victory, on justice. And it's never about vengeance, it's about justice. And I wanted to, first of all, thank Stuart Ain, Shmuel Ben David for a powerful interview and penetrating and beautiful and poignant questions. Sarrae, we thank you for your wisdom, your erudition, your presence, your leadership of MERCAZ USA, your leadership as a luminary in the American Jewish community, and all that you do. And Sarrae and Rabbi Waxman and I were together in Israel in February, and those were much, much different times. And a number of questions have been asked. Resources, MERCAZ USA, AIPAC, ADL, American Jewish Congress, they go to their websites. Our synagogue every day is putting out more material, resources, talking points that help you grapple with what we see. If you have yet to read Darrell Horn's amazing essay in the New York Times, read anything about Bret Stephens, what he has written. Read Kornevich, who wrote about international law and the right of a military to impose a siege against another military, even if civilians are collaterally impacted, that there are ways in which international law, and Hamas violated every norm. Israel has made the statement it will observe international law and safeguard civilians at every moment, the most moral army in the world. Go to the resources, call your family, please buy Israeli goods wherever you can. And as someone suggested, if you have companies, buy Israeli stock right now. This is not a stock appeal, but invest in Israel and help the Israeli economy in every way. If you weren't planning on going, book your ticket for 10 months from now and help the airlines. Start to call upon Delta and the other airlines when it's safe enough for them to begin to go back to Israel, and the insurance companies tell the planes they can fly, that we're going to be on those planes when the time comes. But right now, as Sarrae clearly told us, they're fighting a war. And we have to do everything to support the war effort, support the people of Israel. And thank you, one and all, your advocacy for Israel, our being ambassadors for Israel. Am Yisrael Chai, with the flag of Israel behind me, and several of the people who've been kidnapped and abducted. We will ensure that they are, God willingly, brought to freedom, and that the Israeli military, we pray for Tzva Haganah Yisrael. We pray, Avinu Shabbat that God should safeguard the people and state of Israel. Thank you, one and all. Go out, be ambassadors to Israel, stand proudly with Israel, do everything we can do. We thank Sarrae, we thank Stuart, and we thank one and all. Erev Tov.
לילה טוב.